Christmas had always been complicated in my family, but I kept convincing myself that this year would be different. Every year, I told myself that love would win, that time would soften old grudges, that my mother's sharp edges would dull, especially when it came to my daughter. I was wrong. That morning, snow clung to the edges of the road as we drove to my childhood home. My daughter sat in the back seat humming softly, her red dress folded carefully in her lap so it wouldn't wrinkle. She had chosen it herself days ago, twirling in front of the mirror and asking, "Do you think Grandma will like this one?" I smiled and said yes, even though something in my chest tightened when she said Grandma. The house looked exactly the same as it always had. White lights framed the windows, a wreath hung on the door, and the faint smell of pine and cinnamon drifted into the cold air. It looked warm, safe, familiar. That illusion lasted only seconds. Inside, relatives laughed too loudly, glasses clinked, and Christmas music played in the background. My mother stood near the fireplace, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed. When she saw me, her smile barely reached her eyes. When she saw my daughter, her expression changed, subtle but unmistakable. It was the look she always gave her. Distance disguised as politeness. My daughter didn't notice. She ran forward, excitement glowing on her face, holding out a small handmade card she had spent hours on. "Grandma, I made this for you." The room quieted, not completely, but enough that I felt it. My mother didn't take the card. Instead, she stood up slowly, as if choosing her moment. Her voice was calm, measured, and cold in a way that made my skin prickle. "You shouldn't call me that," she said. My daughter blinked. "Call you what?" My heart started racing. I took a step forward, already knowing, but not wanting to know. My mother straightened her shoulders and looked directly at my child. "You're not my granddaughter," she said clearly, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "And you shouldn't be here." Time stopped. The music kept playing, but it sounded far away. My daughter's smile faded into confusion. Her hands dropped to her sides, the card bending slightly as her fingers tightened around it. "I'm not," she asked quietly. My mother didn't hesitate. She pointed toward the door. "Get out." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone cleared their throat. No one spoke. No one stopped her. I felt heat rush through my body, anger, shock, humiliation. But stronger than all of it was the pain of watching my child try to understand rejection she didn't deserve. "She's a child," I said, my voice shaking despite my effort to stay calm. "She's my daughter, and not my blood." My mother snapped. "I won't pretend for appearances. This is a family gathering." Family, the word landed like a slap. My daughter turned to me then, tears pooling in her eyes. "Mom, did I do something bad?" That question broke me. I knelt down in front of her, ignoring everyone else in the room. I smoothed her hair, forced my voice to stay steady, and said, "No, sweetheart, you did nothing wrong, nothing at all." Her lips trembled. Then why? I didn't let her finish. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly as if I could shield her from the moment itself. Around us, the silence grew heavier. My mother said nothing more. She didn't need to. The damage was already done. I stood, took my daughter's coat from the chair, and helped her put it on. My hands shook, but my movements were gentle. I refused to let her see me fall apart. Not here, not in front of people who didn't protect her. As we walked toward the door, I felt eyes on us. Some filled with pity, others with discomfort, none with courage. The door closed behind us with a soft click. Outside, the cold hit us immediately. Snowflakes brushed against my face, sharp and stinging. My daughter clung to my hand, her small fingers icy. "Mom," she whispered, "why doesn't Grandma want me?" I swallowed hard, my throat burning. "I don't know," I said quietly. "But I know this: you are loved, more than you'll ever understand." That was the moment Christmas stopped meaning what it used to. And that was the moment something inside me changed forever. We didn't speak much on the drive home. The heater hummed softly, fighting the cold that crept in through the windows, but nothing could warm the space that had opened between us. My daughter stared out at the passing streetlights, tracing patterns on the glass with her finger. Every few minutes, she wiped her cheeks quickly, as if embarrassed by her tears. I wanted to scream. I wanted to turn the car around and demand answers, apologies, justice, but I knew none of that would heal her. Noise wouldn't fix what had been broken, so I stayed quiet, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles ached, letting the silence do what words couldn't. When we got home, she kicked off her shoes and went straight to her room. No complaints, no questions. That scared me more than crying would have. I followed her, sat beside her on the bed, and watched as she folded the red dress neatly and placed it in the drawer, like she was packing away a part of herself. She didn't like my dress, she said softly. That wasn't about the dress. I replied immediately, my voice firmer than I felt. That wasn't about you at all, she nodded, but I could tell she didn't fully believe me. Children internalize rejection. They always think it's their fault. That night, she crawled into my bed, something she hadn't done in years. She curled against me, her body tense, breath uneven. I held her and whispered stories from when she was a baby, how she laughed before she could talk, how she used to fall asleep on my chest, how she had always been wanted. Still, sleep didn't come easily. In the dark, she finally asked the question she'd been holding back. Am I not family? My chest tightened so hard it hurt. You are my family, I said, and anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve you. She was quiet for a long time after that. Then she nodded once, like she was accepting a rule she hadn't written but would have to live with anyway. When she finally fell asleep, I stayed awake. Memories surfaced, small moments I had ignored for years. The way my mother corrected my daughter's manners but laughed when other grandchildren misbehaved. The way she never posted her picture, never introduced her proudly. I had explained it away, made excuses, told myself love would grow. I realized then that love doesn't grow where it's not planted. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages, family members asking why we left early, some pretending they didn't know, others suggesting I overreacted. My mother didn't message at all. That silence was louder than anything she could have said. I didn't respond. I made breakfast. I helped my daughter with homework. I brushed her hair and packed her lunch like nothing had changed. Because for her, I needed life to feel normal. But inside me, something hardened, not into bitterness, but into clarity. I understood then that protecting my child meant choosing her over tradition, over blood, over a mother who had already chosen cruelty. Days turned into weeks, Christmas decorations came down, life moved forward. My daughter laughed again, slowly at first, then freely. She stopped asking about Grandma. I didn't bring her up, but I made decisions quietly. I stopped sending photos. I declined invitations. When birthdays came, I sent polite messages but nothing more. No visits, no explanations. Distance wasn't punishment, it was boundaries. In that space we grew stronger. Evenings filled with movie nights and homemade dinners. New traditions replaced old ones. My daughter began to stand taller, speak louder, smile wider. She was healing. And I was changing too. I no longer felt the need to earn approval from people who measured love in bloodlines. I stopped apologizing for my existence, for my choices, for my child. One night, as I tucked her into bed, she looked up at me and said, "Mom, I think I'm glad we left." I kissed her forehead, my eyes burning. Me too. I whispered, that was when I knew. I didn't need revenge fueled by anger. I didn't need confrontation or screaming matches. The greatest consequence would be absence. They would feel it in missed holidays, in empty chairs, in photos that never came, and one day, when they realized what they lost, it would already be too late. Time has a way of revealing what people try to hide. At first, my absence went unnoticed. Holidays passed, and I imagined my mother assuming I would come around eventually, like I always had. I was the forgiving one, the quiet one, the one who absorbed hurt so everyone else could stay comfortable. But comfort doesn't last when something essential disappears. By spring, questions started circulating. Why weren't we at Easter? Why hadn't anyone seen my daughter in months? Why did family photos look incomplete? I heard about it through whispers, an aunt mentioning it during a phone call. a cousin sending a casual message asking how we were. I kept my answers simple, "We're doing well," and nothing more. I refused to relive the moment for people who hadn't stood up when it mattered. My mother finally reached out in early summer. The message was short, careful, controlled. "Why are you keeping her from me?" I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. My hands didn't shake this time. "I'm not keeping her from anyone." I typed, "I'm keeping her safe." There was no response. That silence felt different, heavier, less powerful. Life without them had given me perspective. I noticed how often I used to brace myself before family gatherings, how my shoulders used to tense at the sound of my mother's voice. Without that constant pressure, I felt lighter, freer, stronger. My daughter changed too. She stopped shrinking in rooms. She raised her hand in class. She made friends easily, laughing without looking around to see if it was allowed. Confidence grew quietly where fear had once lived. One afternoon, while helping her with a school project about family, she paused and looked at me. "Can family be people who choose you?" "Yes," I said instantly. "That's the best kind." She smiled and wrote it down. Meanwhile, the story I hadn't told began telling itself. At a family gathering I didn't attend, someone asked directly why my daughter wasn't considered a granddaughter. My mother tried to deflect, claimed it was a misunderstanding, that emotions had run high, but children remember. And adults talk. The truth surfaced piece by piece. People started seeing patterns they had ignored. Stories of favoritism, of coldness disguised as tradition, of love given conditionally. And for the first time, my mother wasn't controlling the narrative. She began calling more frequently, leaving voicemails that sounded almost desperate. "She's just a child. I didn't mean it like that. You're tearing the family apart." I listened once. Then I stopped answering because boundaries don't require explanation. That fall, my daughter won an award at school. She stood on stage, proud and smiling, holding a certificate. Parents took photos. Applause filled the room. I watched her glow and realized how much my mother had missed already. No photos, no applause, no proof of how wrong she had been. When my daughter noticed her absence, she didn't ask where Grandma was. She simply waved at me from the stage, her eyes searching for mine. That was enough. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. A message from my mother. I deserved to see her. I finally replied. "Children don't exist to fulfill anyone's entitlement," I wrote. "They exist to be loved." That was the moment the power shifted completely. From then on, the messages slowed. Invitations stopped. I heard from others that my mother was quieter, more withdrawn. That she spoke about us often, with regret she didn't know how to name. I didn't celebrate that. I didn't need her pain to validate mine. My revenge wasn't about watching her suffer. It was about refusing to suffer anymore. As winter approached again, my daughter helped me decorate our small apartment. She hung ornaments crookedly, laughing when they fell. We made hot chocolate and listened to music that felt gentle, not forced. One night, she looked at me and said, "Mom, I think Grandma didn't know how to love me." I took a breath. "Some people don't," I said, "but that's not your burden." She nodded, accepting it in a way only children can, simply, honestly. That's when I knew the hardest part was over. The truth was out, the distance was set, and we were no longer waiting for permission to belong. All that remained was the final reckoning, the moment when absence would speak louder than any accusation. And it was coming. The invitation arrived in late November. It was handwritten, something my mother only did when she wanted the message to feel personal, heavy, undeniable. She asked if we would come for Christmas. No demands this time, no assumptions, just a careful request wrapped in fragile politeness. I didn't answer right away. I showed it to my daughter instead. She read it quietly, her face thoughtful rather than hurt. Then she handed it back to me and said, "Only if we can leave whenever we want." I smiled. "We can." That Christmas, we arrived on our own terms. The house looked the same, but it felt different, quieter, almost nervous. Conversations stopped when we walked in. Eyes turned. Smiles were cautious, unsure. My daughter stayed close to me, not afraid, just observant. My mother approached slowly. She looked older somehow, smaller. When she knelt in front of my daughter, her voice cracked. "Hello," she said softly. I'm glad you came." My daughter didn't move. She glanced up at me, not asking permission, but grounding herself. Then she looked back at my mother and said calmly, "I'm here because my mom said I could be." The honesty landed hard. Dinner passed in strained politeness. No one mentioned last year, but it sat at the table with us, heavy and undeniable. My mother watched my daughter constantly, every laugh, every smile, as if memorizing what she had missed. After dessert, my mother cleared her throat. "I want to say something," she announced. The room stilled. She stood, hands shaking slightly, and looked directly at my daughter. "What I said last Christmas was wrong," she began. "I was cruel. I let my beliefs hurt someone who didn't deserve it." My daughter listened quietly, then my mother turned to me. "I lost a year with you with her, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope—" I stood before she could finish. "I'm glad you said that," I said evenly, "but this isn't about hope. Everyone watched. You don't get access to my child because you regret losing control," I continued. "You get access when you understand what you did, and accept that you may never get back what you broke." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "I wasn't done. Last year, you told my daughter she wasn't family," I said calmly, "so I built one where she would never question that again." I turned to my daughter. "Do you want to stay?" She thought for a moment. Then she shook her head gently. "I want to go home." And that was it. No yelling, no insults, no drama. We gathered our coats and left. Behind us, no one tried to stop us. That night, back in our warm, quiet home, my daughter curled up on the couch with a blanket inside. "I'm glad I don't need her anymore," she said. I kissed the top of her head. That's strength. In the weeks that followed, I heard how my mother withdrew even more. How the family gatherings felt emptier. How she spoke of us often, softly, with regret. But regret doesn't rewind time. My daughter grew into someone confident, compassionate, and unafraid to set boundaries. She learned early that love isn't something you beg for. It's something you build. And I learned that the sweetest revenge isn't confrontation, it's peace. It's choosing your child every time. It's walking away without bitterness. It's letting silence teach the lesson words never could. That Christmas, my mother lost the power she thought she had. And my daughter gained something far greater, a life where she always knows she belongs.